The great audience chamber of the Zevran Continuum was designed to project glory, not humiliation. Golden arches soared to impossible heights, carved pillars shimmered with embedded crystals, and an ocean of marble stretched out beneath the gathered nobility. On that throne, a monstrous creation of gilded metal and jeweled inlay, sat Empress Lysra, supreme sovereign of 1,000 worlds, her head crowned with fire-red braids laced in crystal. And she was stuck. Her gown, an elaborate cascade of silks and gemstones, had tangled and bunched, pulling her slender frame deeper into the ornate seat until her hips refused to move. The gilded throne that symbolized her divine rule had become a merciless trap. Her light purple skin flushed darker in shame, her cobalt eyes blazing as she tugged uselessly against the carved armrests. A faint creak echoed through the chamber as if mocking her. "Majesty," whispered Lord Vaynar, the High Chamberlain, his voice trembling. "Perhaps if we, apply pressure from this angle." The attempt collapsed immediately. Courtiers clustered like frightened birds, some tugging delicately at her arms, others mumbling theories about geometric constriction. Nothing worked. In fact, each effort only seemed to wedge the Empress more firmly into her humiliating prison. "Silence," Lysra snapped, her voice normally thunderous but now fractured by mortification. The nobles obeyed instantly, bowing so deeply their jeweled headdresses nearly touched the marble. Guards fixed their eyes on the vaulted ceiling, desperate not to be caught staring at the most powerful woman in the galaxy reduced to such absurdity. Yet the reality was undeniable. Empress Lysra of the Zevran Continuum, untouchable, feared, worshipped, was trapped by her own throne. A hush swept across the hall as Lord Vaynar dared voice the unthinkable. "Majesty, there is one option left. The Terran." Gasps erupted. One courtier fainted outright, silks fluttering as he collapsed. Lysra's eyes widened, violet cheeks darkening to near indigo. "You cannot mean." "The human," Vaynar whispered, wringing his bony hands. "The mechanic from the Terran embassy. They say his people are, adept in unconventional matters of engineering. To summon a grease-stained primitive into my sacred hall." Lysra's voice cracked between fury and disbelief. "I would rather." But her protest was drowned by the thunder of the great doors swinging open. In strode a man who seemed a smear of grit across the polished perfection of the chamber. Dax Harrow, Terran mechanic, carried a battered toolbox in one hand and a lopsided grin on his face. His jacket was stained with oil, his boots scuffed, and his brown hair stuck up as if he'd fought a storm and lost. His eyes flicked around the chamber, landing on Lysra, and his grin exploded into laughter. "Oh stars," he choked out, clutching his side. The great Empress of 1,000 worlds, stuck in a chair. The gasp that swept through the nobility nearly shattered the chandeliers. Guards' hands twitched toward their blades. Lysra's violet cheeks flushed dark as a nebula storm. "Silence," she thundered, the jewels of her crown trembling. "You will speak of this to no one, human." Sure, Dax said casually, setting down his toolbox. "Swear on my wrench and everything." "But, wow. I mean, Your Majesty, you're really wedged in there. That's beautiful." Her cobalt eyes burned holes through him. "Fix this." He circled the throne slowly, whistling as he examined the ornate carvings. "They built this thing for show, not for comfort. And you," he squinted, pretending to measure her with his eyes. "You've got presence." The throne wasn't tested for that. A collective shriek rose from the court. One noble collapsed into another's arms. Lysra's hands shot to her face, shielding her from the humiliation. "You insolent creature." Dax grinned, utterly fearless. "Relax. I'm just kidding." "Sort of." He knelt, tapping the gilded side of the throne with a wrench. "All right. I've got a few options here. None of them are dignified." "Explain," Lysra hissed. "Option 1, he said, counting on his fingers. "I dismantle this throne piece by piece." "Problem?" Takes hours, maybe days. Meanwhile, you're on display like a museum piece. Unacceptable. Option 2. Lubricant. Grease up the sides, slide you out slick as a seed. Her entire face went plumb dark. Absolutely not. Thought you'd say that. He shrugged. Which brings us to option 3, wiggle and pull. Quick, messy, sounds real inappropriate, but hey, it works. Lysera's jaw dropped. I forbid. Too late, Dax said cheerfully, placing his hands firmly on her waist. The chamber froze. Nobles recoiled in horror, guards raised their spears, and Lord Vaynar nearly fainted. What do you think you're doing? Lysera hissed, her entire body stiffening under his touch. Unsticking you, obviously, Dax said, unfazed. On 3, give me a wiggle. I will not. 1. Human, I command you. 2. This is outrageous. 3. He pulled. Lysera let out a noise so undignified it echoed like a scandal through the silent chamber. Fabric scraped against gold, her crown slipped sideways, and she froze, mortified. Oh, that was adorable, Dax said seriously, eyes sparkling. Do it again. The Empress of the Continuum covered her face, her violet skin glowing crimson at the edges. The throne groaned beneath her, her gown caught and twisted. And yet, there was the faintest hint of movement. Her court stood like statues, petrified by what they had witnessed. Lysera's breath came sharp and furious. If I must endure this indignity, I will do so without an audience. Her jeweled hand snapped outward, pointing at the massive doors. All of you. Out. The chamberlain paled. Majesty, we cannot leave you alone with. It is my command. Her voice cracked through the hall like a lightning strike. Leave us. Ministers and courtiers scrambled in terror, gowns sweeping the marble as they fled. Guards hesitated, then bowed and marched out. Even Vaynar retreated, wringing his hands. The doors boomed shut. And suddenly the hall was empty. Empty, save for the Empress of light purple skin, blazing with humiliation, and the smirking Terran who crouched at her throne as though he belonged there. Lysera's breath shuddered as she leaned back against the golden seat, whispering bitterly, at least now the entire court will not remember me as the Empress who wiggled. Dax leaned back on his heels, grin widening. Don't worry. I'll remember it plenty. Her cobalt eyes shot to him, cold as space. He lifted his hands innocently. Kidding. Kind of. But hey, at least you cleared the room. Good call. Now we can get serious about these royal hips. Her chest burned with fury and shame. Yet when he dragged his toolbox closer with a scrape, she felt a tremor of something else, something she dared not name. And the throne groaned as if mocking her still. The throne room was cavernous, echoing with every sound now that the nobility had been banished. For the first time in her reign, Empress Lysera found herself utterly alone with a Terran, a man whose laughter still seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Her violet cheeks glowed darker, a storm of humiliation and fury raging beneath her composure. Dax Harrow rolled his shoulders and crouched again, tools spread like a gambler's hand across the marble floor. He whistled a tune, utterly casual, as though he weren't about to touch the most sacred figure in the Zevran continuum. Lysera's voice cracked through the air. You will conduct yourself with respect, human. Respect? Sure, Dax replied, turning a spanner lazily in his hand. But you're still stuck, Majesty. And respect isn't going to get you out of that throne. Her cobalt eyes narrowed. You tread on dangerous ground. He grinned, utterly unfazed. Funny. I thought I was the one trying to free you from dangerous ground. Her nails dug into the gilded armrest. She wanted to order his execution, to end this humiliation before it worsened. Yet she knew, with bitter certainty, that no one else had dared get this far. The throne remained her jailer, and the Terran was her only means of escape. Dax leaned close, his hands hovering near her hips again. Majesty, this'll go smoother if you work with me. Little side-to-side wiggle. Just enough to loosen things up. Her jaw dropped. You dare. He waggled his own hips in demonstration, shameless, right there before her. Like this. A shimmy. A shake. Loosen the tension. Her regal composure cracked into outrage. This is vulgar. Yeah, but effective. He tapped the armrest with the spanner. Come on, Your Highness. Shake what your genetic designers gave you. The gasp that left her lips was almost a growl. I do not wiggle. Guess you stay stuck then, he said lightly, standing as though to leave. Enjoy explaining that to your court. Maybe I'll come back in a few days when they've brought in a crane. Her stomach plummeted. The thought of her enemies whispering, her ministers smirking behind folded fans, was unbearable. Wait. The word escaped before she could swallow it. Dax turned back, his grin slow and wolfish. Yeah. Her chest tightened. To command him was to acknowledge her own helplessness. Yet pride bent beneath necessity. Her lips trembled as she hissed, "Show me this, wiggle." His eyebrows shot up. Oh, I'll show you. He demonstrated again, utterly shameless, hips swaying with exaggerated flair. Lysera's face went nearly indigo, her red hair trembling with each outraged breath. And still, she forced herself to shift. The smallest motion. The tiniest shimmy. The throne creaked. Dax bit his lip, trying not to laugh. See? Progress. Her body stiffened as if she could will the moment to vanish. Do not speak of this. Wouldn't dream of it, he said, crouching again. All right. On 3, we add a pull. You wiggle, I tug. Got it? No. Perfect. 1, 2, 3. His hands tightened at her waist and he heaved. Lysera's body shifted, gown straining, the throne groaning like some beast refusing to release its prey. She gasped, an unthinkable sound slipping from her throat. Almost there, Dax muttered, sweat beading his brow. You're fighting me, Majesty. Stop resisting. Her entire being rebelled. I resist nothing. I am Empress of the Continuum. Aha, he said, bracing his boots and tugging harder. And right now, the Continuum's Empress needs a shove and a wiggle. That's just mechanics. Her crown tilted dangerously, her violet cheeks blazing hotter than any sun. The noise of silk grinding against gilded metal echoed scandalously through the chamber. Stop, she cried. Stop making that sound. That's not me, Dax replied innocently. That's your gown. Totally normal. He smirked up at her. Though, gotta admit, Majesty, it does sound a little suggestive. Her breath caught like lightning in her chest. You are vile. Maybe, he said, tugging again. But I'm the vile one who's getting you free. Her minister's whispers still haunted her ears. The eyes of the court, their horrified gasps. The indignity burned worse than any flame. Yet here, in the empty hall, it was only her and him. His warm hand steady on her waist, his maddening grin, his voice coaxing her as if she were no different from any other soul he'd helped pull free of a jammed machine. Majesty, he said softly now. Trust me. Just one more big wiggle. Her hands gripped the armrests until her knuckles gleamed pale. Every nerve in her royal body screamed against it. Yet she had no choice. Her lips parted in a strangled whisper. Very well. 1, Dax counted, his grin widening. 2. She shut her eyes, humiliated beyond words. 3. She wiggled with desperate force. He pulled with all his strength. The throne screeched, silk tore, and with a sudden violent pop, Empress Lysera lurched forward. Her crown tumbled away. Her limbs flailed gracelessly. And she crashed straight into Dax Harrow, the two of them toppling together onto the marble. The silence that followed was absolute. Lysera's breath came quick and shallow, her light purple face inches from his. Her hair spilled around them like a scarlet halo. His arms were firm beneath her, holding her steady against his chest. Dax's grin softened into something far more dangerous. "Well," he said, voice rough with laughter. "That was one hell of a wiggle." Her cobalt eyes widened, her cheeks burning near violet black. "You are unbearable." And to her horror, laughter bubbled in her chest. It slipped out, shaky at first, then unstoppable, echoing through the chamber like music she had not allowed herself in years. Dax laughed with her, his chest shaking beneath hers, the absurdity binding them in shared scandal. For a stolen instant, no crown, no court, no empire existed, only a woman and a man, tangled on cold marble, laughing as though they had known each other far longer than a handful of outrageous minutes. The next morning, the throne hall pulsed with tension. Word of the incident had spread like wildfire, whispered across banquet tables, hissed in palace corridors, sung in back-alley taverns with more embellishment than truth. By sunrise, the scandal had already rippled through every court of the Zevran continuum. Empress Lysera entered with her head high, her crown restored, her crimson braids shining like molten fire. Her gown flowed flawlessly, every fold precise, every gemstone aligned. Yet even with all her meticulous preparation, her cheeks bore a faint flush she could not fully conceal. The chamber filled with nobles who bowed deeply, their jeweled headdresses quivering. But behind their masks of reverence, their eyes glittered with hunger for gossip. Lord Vaynar cleared his throat nervously. "Majesty, before the council convenes, there is, the matter of yesterday's incident." A storm of whispers rose immediately, rising and falling like a tide of venom. Lysera's gaze cut across the assembly, sharp as a blade. Silence fell in an instant. "Yes," she said coldly. "I was inconvenienced. The matter was resolved." With respect, one minister dared to speak, his voice trembling but emboldened by scandal. "It was resolved by a Terran mechanic. The court, the people, they will demand an explanation." Lysera's cobalt eyes hardened. "Then you shall have one." The great doors swung open. Dax Harrow strolled in, toolbox clanking, boots muddy against the immaculate marble. His jacket was still stained with oil, his grin as shameless as ever. The nobles recoiled like he was a contagion made flesh. He bowed theatrically, arms sweeping. "Your Majesty." Or should I say, my favorite client. Gasps rippled through the chamber. A noblewoman fainted outright, collapsing against her husband. Guards stiffened, hands twitching toward their weapons. Lysera ignored the chaos, her voice ringing like steel. This human proved himself yesterday where all others failed. He acted swiftly, boldly, and without fear. He alone succeeded where my most trusted failed. Dax winked at her, which nearly made her stumble on her own words. She forced herself to continue. "Therefore," she declared, "he will remain at my side as official mechanic of the throne. Effective immediately." The chamber erupted. Shouts, protests, and gasps crashed together in a storm of disbelief. "Impossible," one minister cried. "A Terran." "He touched her," another screamed. "He touched the Empress." "Blasphemy," a third wailed, clutching his chest. Dax only spread his arms, basking in the outrage. "Guess that makes me royalty adjacent. Should I start practicing my bowing? Or maybe," his grin sharpened, more wiggling. Half the chamber shrieked as though struck. Lysera's violet skin burned nearly indigo. Her hand slammed down on the throne's armrest. Silence. The hall fell still, trembling in her command. Only her breath betrayed the storm within her. Her gaze swept the chamber, deadly sharp, before softening, ever so slightly, when it landed on Dax. "He will remain," she said firmly. He will maintain the throne. He will ensure such humiliations are never repeated. Several nobles fainted at once, collapsing like dominoes across the marble floor. Dax folded his arms smugly. Don't worry, Majesty. I'll keep a very close eye on those royal hips. Her entire body stiffened, her light purple cheeks blazing dark. She should have ordered him dragged from the chamber in chains. She should have screamed for his execution. Instead, her lips twitched with the faintest, most treacherous curve of a smile. The scandal had only just begun. Days blurred into chaos. Rumors spread faster than starships. Market stalls sold cheap caricatures of a purple-skinned empress wriggling in her throne. Children giggled, mimicking exaggerated wiggles until their horrified parents scolded them. Minstrels sang sly ballads about the human who dared touch divinity. The council seethed, nobles plotting furiously to twist scandal into political advantage. But Lysera never rescinded her decree. Dax Harrow, to their horror, truly became her throne mechanic. He sprawled across the dais for hours, grease-staining ancient carpets as he pried open panels and muttered about faulty designs. Ministers watched aghast as he whistled off-key, his spanner tapping against relics sacred for centuries. One afternoon, sweat beading his brow, he straightened at last. There. Reinforced the sides, widened the seat, adjusted the tilt. No more sticking. Lysera arched one crimson brow. You are certain? Positive. He patted the armrest like a friend. This thing could fit 3 people now. Tested it myself. No sticking. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. You sat in my throne. Purely professional, Dax said with mock solemnity. Though, honestly, didn't suit me. Too much glitter. I'm more of a barstool guy. Her hand twitched against her gown, torn between outrage and laughter. You are impossible. Later, when the chamber emptied and only he remained, Lysera descended the dais. The torchlight painted her light purple skin in soft glow, her crimson braids glimmering like fire. She lowered herself into the throne once more, careful and deliberate. She shifted. Froze. Oh no, she said flatly. Dax's head snapped up. Don't even start. I am stuck again, she said, her tone regal, her face perfectly composed despite the faint flush coloring her cheeks. He narrowed his eyes. Majesty, I spent 4 hours fixing this monstrosity. You're not stuck. Perhaps you should check, she replied coolly. He folded his arms. You're enjoying this. I most certainly am not. Aha. He stepped closer, bracing his hands on the throne. Diagnosis, Majesty. Her lips pressed tight, hiding the smile that threatened to betray her. Another wiggle, perhaps. Their eyes locked, hers burning with stubborn pride, his glinting with shameless amusement. The hall was empty, silent, theirs alone. And for the first time, Lysera wondered if the throne was truly her prison, or if it was becoming her excuse. Night draped itself across the capital, veiling the crystal towers and golden domes of the Zevran palace in silver light from twin moons. Most of the nobility had retreated to their chambers, but the throne hall still glowed faintly, torches burning low against the vast marble walls. Dax Harrow sat cross-legged on the dais, his battered toolbox spread around him. He hummed an old Terran tune while polishing a spanner with a rag that had survived more engines than palaces. Grease smudged his cheek, his jacket was frayed at the sleeves, yet he looked entirely comfortable sprawled where only priests and sovereigns were permitted. Empress Lysera lingered nearby, not in her throne, but on the steps just below it. Her gown shimmered faintly in the moonlight, violet skin glowing pale, crimson braids tumbling like molten fire over her shoulders. She should have been in her private chambers, reviewing council decrees or rehearsing punishments for ministers who dared whisper. Yet she remained. Do humans always make such noise when they labor? She asked suddenly, her voice soft but cutting through the silence. Dax looked up, grin crooked. Keeps the hands busy. Keeps the silence from getting too loud. Why? You prefer your mechanics solemn and gloomy? I prefer them not at all, Lysra replied coolly, though the corners of her lips betrayed a twitch. Liar, he said, snapping his toolbox shut. If you really preferred that, you'd have tossed me out already. Her cobalt eyes flicked away, but the warmth spreading through her cheeks betrayed her. I keep you because you are useful. Sure, he said, leaning back on his palms. That's all it is. The silence stretched, heavy yet strangely warm. Lysra's gaze drifted to the throne. Gleaming, unyielding, a symbol of her majesty, and of her humiliation. She remembered the creak of gold, the laughter, the warmth of his arms breaking her fall. Slowly, deliberately, she spoke. Perhaps the throne is not the problem. Dax tilted his head. Oh. What is? Her heart hammered, but her voice remained smooth. Perhaps I should abandon it entirely. Big words for an empress, he said, smirking. Where would you sit then? Her cobalt eyes locked with his. Perhaps, in your lap. The spanner nearly slipped from his hand. He barked a laugh so loud it echoed from the marble pillars. Stars above, you're dangerous. She straightened, cheeks burning nearly indigo. Do you mock me? Mock? Dax leaned closer, grin crooked but softened. Not a chance. Just surprised you admitted it. Admitted what? She snapped, though her voice faltered. That you like having me close. Her breath caught. She turned her face sharply away, but not before he glimpsed the treacherous flicker of a smile on her lips. Dax rose, crossing the steps. He didn't touch her, not yet, but his presence radiated heat. His voice dropped low, stripped of his usual humor. You don't need a throne, Lysra. You're already the most powerful person in this room. Her chest tightened at the sound of her name without title. No one had ever dared speak it aloud. Yet from him, it didn't feel like insult. It felt freeing. She stood abruptly, her gown swirling. You are presumptuous, Terran. Yeah, he said, his grin returning. But that's why you keep me around. She paused at the top of the dais, silhouetted against moonlit glass. For one heartbeat, she allowed the smile to blossom fully, radiant and dangerous. Perhaps I do, she whispered. Then she vanished into the shadows of the palace. Dax sat back on the steps, laughing quietly to himself. The throne might never trap her again, but her heart, that was another story. The days that followed tested every seam of Lysra's authority. Whispers of her mechanics spread faster than any decree. Children in markets mimicked her royal wiggle until horrified parents dragged them away. Nobles exchanged sly looks, their tongues sharper than blades. Ministers argued in furious circles about propriety, security, even theology. Yet through it all, Lysra did not dismiss him. Dax remained at her side, tinkering with the throne, cracking jokes that made half the court faint and the other half seethe. The scandal grew, and so did something Lysra feared far more than gossip. One evening, after the last of the ministers had stormed out in outrage, Lysra descended from her dais. The throne gleamed behind her, flawless and waiting, but she walked past it. Dax leaned against a pillar, arms folded, his grin softer than usual. You're late, he teased. She tilted her chin, crimson braids catching the torchlight. An empress is never late. Guess I'll wait forever, then, he said, not moving from her path. For once, she didn't order him aside. She stopped only a step away, her violet skin glimmering faint in the low firelight. Her cobalt eyes locked on his, and the silence between them grew thick, heavy, fragile. You freed me from more than the throne, she murmured. And I despise you for it. Despise me, huh? His grin curved slow. Funny. You don't look like a woman who despises me. Her lips trembled, caught between denial and truth. For the first time in her reign, Empress Lysera felt her power slip willingly from her grasp. And she did not reclaim it. Here's the closing 300-word outro with the call to action you requested. I kept the voice in line with a relaxed, engaging YouTube host style, but also tied it back to the story's scandalous humor and simmering tension. And that, my friends, is where we'll leave Empress Lysera and her insufferably shameless Terran mechanic. From one humiliating mishap with a gilded throne, an entire galaxy's worth of scandal was born, rumors that shook courts, toppled ministers, and left nobles fainting into their jeweled sleeves. Yet beneath the laughter and the outrage, something far more dangerous was brewing, the slow unraveling of pride, and the spark of a connection neither ruler nor mechanic could afford to name. It's easy to laugh at the image of the most powerful woman in the Zevran continuum wiggling herself free with the help of a grease-stained human. But if you look closer, it's also a story about masks slipping. About a sovereign discovering, for the first time, that being seen as just a woman instead of a goddess didn't destroy her throne, it made her human. And about a man who, with humor and irreverence, found a way past every wall she had built around her heart. Of course, the throne might be fixed, but if you ask me, Lysera's troubles are only beginning. Rumors grow faster than empires fall. And once you let a Terran into your court, you may never get rid of him, or want to. Thanks for sticking with this HFY retelling. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next wild tale from across the stars. Drop a like if you were laughing at Lysera's royal wiggle, and share this video with a friend who loves their sci-fi with a healthy dose of scandal and humor. Until next time, keep your crown steady, your thrones reinforced, and your hearts just a little less guarded.